Hey artist, welcome to this episode. Today I want to talk about why documentation matters when applying to art grants as a beginner artist. So why do I want to talk about this? Well, I just submitted an art grant application to a local funder, and one of the biggest and most nerve-wracking things that can happen is hearing back from them. But I wanted to share this to talk about the importance of documentation and having everything ready to send. And the importance about having strong documentation ready to apply for grants and how that can make a huge difference, especially for a beginner artist. I cannot stress this enough. One of the best things that you can do for your future self is to start organizing and saving materials from your artistic journey now, even if you feel like you are still at the beginning. So I wanted to share this moment because I know that many of us are currently applying to multiple opportunities. We're applying to grants, we're applying to residencies, fellowships, exhibitions, and so many more. And one of the biggest things that these applications ask us are to consider submitting documentation, pictures of the work that we create. And that comes with multiple reasons. Documentation asks us to explain ourselves, to organize our thoughts, advocates for our ideas visually, and also communicate to the funder why our work matters. And that can feel vulnerable, especially when we are growing and we may be thinking about our confidence as artists. One of the biggest things I've found in my practice is that many of us may think that we need huge exhibitions, massive audiences, or years of experience before we can apply for funding. But many times, funders are simply looking for artists who are thoughtful, organized, community oriented, and committed to the practice. Of course, I'm not going to speak for funders, but this is what I have discovered working with them. One of the biggest things that I've learned from funders is that they want to understand who we are, what we care about, and whether or not we can bring the project to life. And one of the biggest things is documentation and how documentation can help that story. Now, I'm not going to talk about writing a grant itself because that can be another workshop in itself, but I do want to talk about taking pictures and why this is an important part of our practice and what we need to or can consider taking more time to document our journeys. One of the biggest things as an artist is that sometimes it's hard to communicate our full vision that exists inside our head. Sometimes we may assume that other people understand what we think, what we care about, and understand the depth of our work because we honestly live with this every day. But one of the things that I've found is that funders, panelists, and organizations are often encountering the work for the first time through a PDF application on a screen. And believe me, I've served in multiple panels throughout the past 8 to 10 years. And when I serve behind panels, I think about the talent that artists bring to the applications. Sometimes I'm not familiar with the medium. Sometimes I'm not familiar with terminology that other artists use in other art formats. So I think it's important to include things that are understandable and geared towards the general audience. So it's important to think about the images that you include, the way that you organize your materials, the clarity of your writing, and the examples that you provide to help people understand what you are building. The challenge, honestly, is that I've found that how hard it can be to communicate what you can do with people who are not familiar with your medium or your work. I would love to do another episode on serving on panels and how this information has helped me apply for other grants in the future. So this is why documentation matters. So you may be asking yourself, so how do I document? How do I take pictures? And this is one of the most exciting and sometimes hard parts of delivering art or creating art because I found myself creating, painting, doing a mural, directing a workshop, and at the same time, I need to remember to take pictures of what I'm doing. Now, we can always hire someone else to take pictures. We can always hire a photographer. We can always hire someone who can help us be in the background and we can focus completely on what we're doing. But sometimes we're not there yet. And I wanted to offer a few tips for helping us. So, one of the things that I remember is that next time you're in a workshop, next time you're teaching a class, next time you're doing a mural or even a painting from the beginning to the end, I would encourage you to remind yourself to take pictures of every single moment that you think is important to communicate to the world. From opening a lid of paint, from preparing a wall and laying the foundation, to talking to people who will help you with painting a mural. If you're doing a workshop, take pictures of photos of your participants learning how to paint. If you are doing a mural, take pictures of progress. If you're doing a community event that involves art, take pictures of participants. Of course, we need to have permission to take pictures of people. Anything that you can think about, like your sketchbook, your installation, a performance, your collaboration with other artists, your art fairs, it's all important to continue to document. And those moments become part of your artistic archive. They become proof of your work, your consistency, your imagination, and your impact. So I think it's important to think about how sometimes we may underestimate ourselves and the importance of documenting smaller moments because we may be waiting for the big opportunity before thinking that we are honestly the great artists that we are. And I tell you this because when I started painting and drawing, I started with a lot of doubts and a lot of ideas about how to do art. And it was hard. It was hard. And I want to offer this advice to all of us who were there once, or even for people who are in this practice for many years. So let's remember to document anything from the small moments to the big moments. One thing that I've learned is that one workshop can turn into another opportunity. One small exhibition leads to another connection. One local grant application becomes a part or a component for a larger grant later on. We might not see where this is going, but in a few years we may see that this is just developing into something bigger. And the biggest thing is that little by little, these moments begin to tell the story of who we are becoming. And one of the biggest things that we know about me is that I really value organization. I value organization for multiple reasons. One of the first ones has to be to reduce stress, to reduce the scrambling and the looking for things during application season, especially when everything becomes busy. As I go, I like to save pictures of my favorites. As I go, I like to save folders where I can come back and say, okay, I'm proud of this time, and I'm hopeful that I can use this in the future. So I know we talked about this before, and everything is really connected. But when we're thinking about documenting our work, let's think about having folders ready with artist statements, our bios, our resumes, high resolution images, captions, project descriptions, and testimonials when available. When we have all that ready, that process can become much smoother. And it's easier for us to have a bank of these materials when we're applying for these opportunities because we already have them and we are not scrambling through old messages like email or text or even looking for a blurry image or sifting, through a blurry collection of images from 2 years ago. So I'm not asking all of us to have everything ready at the first year. It may take time. I've been doing this for now 8 years or so. And the thing about this is that it's taking me this much to refine, to improve, and I did not build this from scratch because I already had multiple things I already had in the past. So again, this one of the biggest things that I remember is submitting things to the last minute. So I don't want anyone to do that. Let's not send things at midnight when applications are due, especially if they're due on a Sunday at 11:59 p.m. So I know I've talked a lot about why this is important. I want to be mindful of everyone's time as well. I want to give you a quick list of things that I do, of tips that I would encourage or give any beginner artist applying for art grants when documenting. So as I said earlier, the first one would be create folders on your favorite platform for grant materials. Keep updated versions of your artist bio and CV. Very important to have a few images. I usually recommend 10 to 20 high quality images of your work with anything from exhibitions, workshops, and community events. And also, funders sometimes ask for screenshots of press, testimonials, or other social media posts. So write down project ideas before the deadlines arrive as well, so that we can keep organized. Now, I talked about pictures. If you're into taking videos, take videos of those events. Consider taking them landscape or portrait mode and take process or document your photos that way. One thing I would also encourage is to write about your work if you're into writing, and those are the tips that I would recommend. Now, keep in mind that I'm sharing my experience as a visual artist and an illustrator, someone who uses painting and has been illustrating digitally for the past 5, 6 years now. And what I share in this episode might be different from you or for you because you work in another medium. So take whatever I say and think about how you can apply it to your own medium and your own work. So continuing with the explanation, documenting is a very important part of the journey. And it's something very intimate as well because it allows me to think about the growth over the past few years because it can turn into an emotional aspect of thinking about how much we have grown over the years. One thing I found is that sometimes I'm moving quickly from project to to project. And sometimes I don't really stop to pause and acknowledge everything that I've been able to do for that work, that I'm just ready for the next. And documentation allows me to pause, allows me to look at the old photos, reminds me of the risks that I took, the spaces that I filled, the people that I connected with. And the most important part is the growth and maturity that my work has improved over the years. So honestly, documentation is part of writing a grant, but also becomes the record of our lives, of our work, our storytelling, and our evolution as an artist. So if you're thinking, yeah, I mean, that's fine, sounds great, but what if I don't feel ready? You know, that's one of the biggest things that I also struggle with. There was, I can tell you many times that I didn't feel ready or didn't have, or feel or felt and didn't have the right skills to do something. But honestly, I learned not to think about not feeling ready and say, okay, these are the skills that I have. If I knew better skills, I would do better, but I didn't have that time. So prepare your materials, even if you don't feel ready. Apply for the opportunity, even if you don't feel ready. I think that even if we don't get the grant, the process itself can be part of who we are becoming as a professional. And like I said, maybe we don't get the grant now, but we may have now a bank of resources and materials for future opportunities. And if nothing happens, what did happen was the learning of applying to the grant, of getting everything ready and becoming more prepared for the next opportunity. So that again, we're not writing and submitting a grant on a Sunday at 11:59 p.m. So as I sit here and think about the waiting period, now that I sent this grant, now it's time to hear and wait to hear back from them about this application. And maybe it gets funded, maybe it doesn't. But regardless of what happens, I know that it helped me reflect more deeply of my work, my goals, and the communities I care about serving through the art. And one of the things about applications is that specifically writing, and I know I said I was not going to touch on writing, but writing allows us to really clarify, to structure our thinking, and that becomes such a powerful way of describing our work without saying vague statements, without going on tangents. And it really makes us sit down and say, okay, this really makes sense. How can we make this tighter? How can we make this just much more direct? And again, that's something that you value communicating to the world. This is something that I really encourage all of us to write about our work or your work. So create an archive of your journey, save flyers, take photos, record your events, and create a journey where you documenting. Like I said, I don't know where this is going. I don't know if I'll get the funding or not, but just know that your work deserves to be remembered, organized, and valued. So again, that's the end of the project of the episode on documentation, but I also want to take time to thank you so much for listening to this episode. It really means a lot that you're here. And I want to say that this podcast is sponsored by me, Antonio Alani's Art, and it's possible made through the support of my children's picture book called Clarita Migrates North. And I'm able to do this work because many of you who have worked with me and who have listened to these episodes have purchased copies of my book. You all have shared, you all have recommended it to someone, and honestly, you all are the ones helping me continue this work. And this sponsorship would not be honestly possible without your support. So thank you so much for helping me share my story, create conversations, and contribute to building something meaningful in our communities. So truly, thank you for everyone who supported the book so far. And if you'd like to learn more about the book or to get your own copy of my book called Clarita Migrates North, you can visit my website at antonioalanisart.com/books, and you can find more about the book there. Or if you're interested more about applying to grants or to exhibitions specifically, definitely subscribe. And I will be sharing more of this professional development information in the future and workshops that I teach and workshops that I am currently planning. So definitely keep in mind on that. And also want to encourage you, if you're interested in applying to galleries as a beginner artist, consider applying to local events around your area. And if you need an extra boost or information that may be helpful, definitely go to my YouTube channel at Antonio Alanis Art. And I have a series of about 12 episodes where I talk about the importance of applying to a beginner, as a beginner artist, to a gallery. And just want to thank you again so much for being here. And I wish you great day.